The morning began like any other, with the city streets waking slowly under the soft light of early sun. Traffic was sparse, the hum of distant engines punctuating the calm of the dawn. The FBI director, a man who had spent decades navigating the most complex and dangerous cases in the country, was driving to an important meeting. He was known for his calm, methodical approach to problems and a reputation that inspired respect both within and outside the agency. Today, however, would test that reputation in a way he could never have anticipated. As he drove through a quiet neighborhood, the rhythmic ticking of the turn signal accompanied the soft sound of the radio playing news updates. There was a sense of normalcy in the air. Yet as he rounded a corner, flashing lights appeared behind his car. A police cruiser was signaling him to pull over. He complied immediately, slowing down and pulling to the side of the road. At first, everything seemed routine. Traffic stops were part of life, and he had seen plenty in his years, though mostly on the other side. The officer who approached his vehicle walked with purpose. His face was set in a stern expression, eyes hidden behind reflective sunglasses. Something in the officer's demeanor was off. There was no greeting, no standard questioning tone, just a brisk demand for the driver's identification and registration. The director handed over his credentials, expecting the usual verification process. Instead, the situation escalated in an instant. Without warning, the officer drew his gun, aiming it at the director. The calm of the morning was shattered. The director froze for a split second, the surreal nature of the moment sinking in. He had dealt with dangerous criminals, armed suspects, and life-threatening situations before. But being held at gunpoint by a fellow law enforcement officer was something entirely different. Fear and disbelief surged through him, but he forced himself to remain composed. He spoke carefully, his voice measured. He identified himself, stating clearly and calmly that he was the FBI director. He explained that he had no intention of resisting and was fully cooperating. Yet the officer did not lower his weapon. He seemed caught in a storm of confusion and suspicion, unable to reconcile the man before him with the authority he represented. The tension was palpable, thick enough to feel in the air. Nearby, a few early morning pedestrians stopped, their eyes widening at the scene. Drivers passing by slowed, some stopping to see what was happening. The sight of a uniformed officer holding a gun on a high-ranking federal official was jarring. Whispers of concern and disbelief spread among the onlookers, their phones discreetly capturing the unsettling moment. The director's mind raced. He thought about the potential consequences if the situation spiraled further. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, could escalate the incident beyond control. He considered his training, his experience, and every lesson learned from years on the job. Remaining calm was not just a personal choice, it was necessary for survival. He kept his hands visible, voice steady, trying to communicate reason to someone who seemed unable to process it. He noticed the officer's body language. Tension radiated from the man, muscles tight, hands trembling slightly around the firearm. The director realized that fear, confusion, and perhaps past experiences were clouding the officer's judgment. He spoke softly, emphasizing cooperation, trying to humanize the interaction. He reminded the officer that he was there to help, not to escalate the situation. Minutes stretched, though they felt like hours. Each second was heavy with uncertainty. The director's training in negotiation and crisis management became his anchor. He engaged the officer in conversation, asking calm questions, gently prompting him to think and reconsider. The officer's replies were clipped, cautious, defensive. It was clear that the officer was caught between following protocol and confronting an unexpected reality. Meanwhile, the director's own internal thoughts wrestled with disbelief. He was someone who upheld the law, who spent his career ensuring justice and fairness. Yet here he was, subjected to an extreme display of power from someone who should have understood both the law and respect for authority. He felt a mix of indignation and concern. He had to navigate this delicate balance between asserting his identity and not provoking further danger. The air was filled with the subtle sounds of the city waking up. Birds chirping, a distant lawnmower, the hum of engines. But the tension in the immediate area was deafening. Each movement, each word had weight. The director knew that any misstep could escalate the situation into something catastrophic. He focused on maintaining calm, using every ounce of presence he had cultivated over decades. Onlookers grew more anxious. Some called emergency services, reporting what they believed to be a potentially violent situation. Their concern was genuine. They could see the gravity of what was unfolding. The director, aware of the growing attention, remained composed, signaling through his words and body language that he meant no harm and was fully compliant. He also thought about the officer's perspective. Fear can make people act irrationally, even trained professionals. The director's empathy allowed him to remain patient, to not react with anger, and to avoid escalating the scenario. He remembered his mentor's advice. In moments of extreme stress, understanding the human element can be as powerful as any law or weapon. Time passed slowly. Each word, each gesture was deliberate. The director maintained eye contact, hands resting visibly on the steering wheel. He explained again who he was and what he did, providing information to verify his identity while maintaining a calm and authoritative tone. The officer's eyes flickered with doubt and hesitation, a small crack in the armor of aggression. The director's training in conflict resolution began to bear fruit. He sensed the officer's tension slightly ease, a subtle acknowledgement that perhaps the situation was not as it appeared. The director continued his gentle but firm communication, emphasizing safety for everyone involved, the importance of verification, and his own non-threatening posture. In the distance, more vehicles slowed. Drivers and passengers stared in disbelief, some whispering to each other, others silently hoping that the situation would not escalate. The scene was a strange juxtaposition of ordinary life and extraordinary tension. The director remained the eye of calm in the storm, a steady presence amid chaos. He also considered the implications beyond the immediate moment. This incident, if mishandled, could have far-reaching consequences for his career, public perception, and most importantly, the lives of those involved. He needed to navigate the next steps with precision, relying on experience, patience, and communication. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officer began to lower the weapon slightly, his grip loosening just enough to indicate hesitation. The director seized the opportunity to continue his calm dialogue, reinforcing his identity and encouraging verification. He reminded the officer that cooperation was key, that no one needed to be harmed, and that mistakes could be rectified. The scene was slowly moving toward resolution, but the tension had not fully dissipated. Every moment was critical. The director remained vigilant, aware that the situation could still turn unexpectedly. He continued to project calm authority and patience, guiding the interaction through careful words and deliberate actions. As the officer finally took a step back, the director felt a cautious sense of relief. The immediate threat had lessened, but the gravity of the situation lingered. The director knew that this incident would not only be a personal trial, but also a story that could shape public discussion about authority, respect, and accountability. The director remained composed, hands visible, voice steady. He continued to provide necessary information for verification, all while monitoring the officer's reactions closely. The officer, now visibly confused and uncertain, seemed to be processing the reality of what had happened. The director's calm and measured approach had prevented a potentially tragic outcome. Bystanders began to relax slightly, sensing the immediate danger had passed. Some whispered words of support and disbelief, unsure of the details but understanding the seriousness of the encounter. The director maintained focus, ensuring that the situation continued to de-escalate safely. In those moments, the director reflected on the fragility of authority and the human tendency toward fear and misjudgment. Even someone trained to enforce the law could make mistakes under stress. Empathy, communication, and patience had proven to be as vital as any badge or gun. The experience was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of human interactions, even in professional contexts. Finally, the officer moved further back, lowering the gun completely. The director remained calm, expressing cautious acknowledgement and guiding the situation toward a safer resolution. Verification processes were beginning, and other law enforcement officers were on their way to clarify the confusion. Relief mingled with lingering tension. The incident was far from over, but the immediate danger had subsided. In that quiet moment, the director took a deep breath, allowing himself a brief pause. He had navigated an extraordinary and frightening encounter with composure, experience, and a careful understanding of human behavior. The world around him began to return to normal, but the memory of the morning's events would remain vivid, a lesson in patience, authority, and the unpredictable nature of life. As other officers approached and the verification process started, the director knew that his next steps would involve careful cooperation and measured responses. The morning had begun like any other, but it had turned into an unexpected trial of authority, empathy, and courage. And though the threat of harm had passed, the story of this moment would continue to unfold, shaping discussions about law enforcement, human error, and the delicate balance between fear and reason. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating, as the FBI director continued to sit in his car, hands clearly visible on the steering wheel. The morning calm had vanished completely, replaced by the sharp, nervous energy of the officer still gripping his weapon. The director, fully aware of the stakes, knew that every word, every gesture mattered. One wrong move, one misread glance could turn the situation from tense to tragic in a heartbeat. He tried again to speak calmly, clearly, and respectfully. He reminded the officer of who he was, of his position, and that he posed no threat. But the officer's eyes were clouded with uncertainty and fear. Authority was one thing, trust another. The officer seemed to struggle with the realization that the man sitting calmly before him was indeed someone with immense responsibility and power. Time moved strangely. Moments felt stretched, drawn out beyond measure, each heartbeat echoing in the silence of the early morning. The director kept his composure, trying to inject humanity into the encounter. He knew that human emotions could both complicate and resolve conflicts, depending on how they were handled. He maintained soft eye contact, his tone steady and reassuring, trying to reach the officer beyond the uniform and the gun. Bystanders were beginning to gather, some cautiously, some with curiosity. One brave onlooker, a middle-aged woman who had been walking her dog, called out softly, urging the officer to lower the gun and remain calm. The director noted her voice but did not divert attention. He understood that adding voices could both help and confuse, and for now, he needed to focus entirely on the immediate threat and the man in front of him. The officer shifted slightly, tension still radiating from his posture. His finger hovered near the trigger, but the grip loosened just a fraction. The director sensed the small change and used it to speak gently, reinforcing his calmness. He explained, not with arrogance but with clarity, that cooperation would make everything safer for both of them. He emphasized that mistakes happen, but they could be resolved peacefully if reason guided their actions. His voice was steady, even when his mind raced. He thought about the importance of de-escalation, about how panic or aggression could make an already dangerous situation catastrophic. His years of handling tense encounters had taught him that human emotion could often be a weapon more potent than any firearm. And right now, he needed to wield it carefully, with patience and empathy. The officer's movements remained unpredictable. He looked around, sometimes glancing at passing vehicles, sometimes back at the director. His training and instinct clashed with the reality of the situation, leaving him frozen in a mixture of fear and disbelief. He seemed to be questioning what he knew, what he had been taught, and what he was seeing. The director spoke softly, trying to guide him toward clarity, toward understanding the truth without escalating the fear. Other officers arrived on the scene, responding to the growing commotion. Their presence added a new layer of complexity. Some were unsure what to do, hesitant in the face of uncertainty. The original officer, still holding the gun, seemed to feel a strange mix of relief and increased tension. Relief because there were more colleagues present, tension because he was no longer the sole authority and had to justify his actions. The director remained composed. He greeted the arriving officers calmly, explaining his identity once more. He continued to communicate clearly, emphasizing that no one needed to be harmed and that careful verification would resolve the situation. The new officers began checking credentials, radios crackling with quiet urgency. The director could feel the situation slowly shifting, the tension beginning to ease, but the danger had not entirely passed. He considered the officer holding him at gunpoint. Fear had overtaken reason, and now the officer was likely realizing the gravity of his mistake. Yet the director knew that fear could drive irrational behavior, and he had to remain patient, ensuring that every action taken minimized the risk for everyone involved. He maintained calm, projecting both authority and empathy, a delicate balance in a situation so fragile. Time continued to crawl. The director noticed subtle changes. The officer's posture relaxed slightly, the gun lowered a fraction more. The director continued speaking, careful not to sound condescending or angry. He praised cooperation where possible, using words to humanize rather than threaten. Every sentence was a tool, every pause deliberate. He was negotiating not with words alone, but with patience, composure, and presence. Meanwhile, the crowd of bystanders grew slightly, curiosity mingling with anxiety. Some tried to maintain distance, sensing the intensity of the encounter. Their whispers and murmurs carried a mixture of fear, intrigue, and concern. Phones recorded the incident, social media waiting for stories to spread, though no one could yet know the full truth of what was happening. The director remained focused on the immediate moment, aware that distractions could be dangerous. He reflected on his career and the irony of the situation. Here he was, someone who spent his life enforcing the law, protecting citizens, and ensuring justice, now confronted with a life-threatening scenario from someone sworn to protect the same public. He did not allow resentment or anger to take over. He focused on survival, de-escalation, and guiding the officer toward clarity. He noticed a shift in the officer's gaze, a flicker of doubt or recognition. The director continued calmly, explaining the importance of verification and safety. He reassured the officer that no one needed to face harm, that proper procedures could confirm identities, and that cooperation would resolve the situation quickly. His words were steady, deliberate, and infused with the calm authority of someone who had faced far worse yet understood the power of patience. Suddenly, another subtle change occurred. The officer's grip on the gun loosened further. The director seized the moment to gently encourage further cooperation. He reminded the officer that mistakes happen, that fear can cloud judgment, but understanding and calm could prevent tragedy. He spoke as a human being to another human being, stripping away hierarchy, uniform, and fear, leaving only reason and empathy. The arriving officers continued to verify the director's credentials, radios buzzing with updates. The tension gradually began to shift from a dangerous standoff to a careful process of confirmation. The original officer, now visibly nervous and conflicted, seemed to realize that the situation was unraveling in a way he could not control. The director's calm and measured communication had prevented immediate disaster, guiding the encounter toward a safer resolution. He noticed the subtle reactions of the officer, shaking hands, rapid blinking, slight adjustments in posture. Every small change was a sign that de-escalation was working, that fear was being replaced by cautious recognition. The director continued to speak gently, reinforcing that cooperation was essential, that mistakes were human, and that understanding could prevent harm. Bystanders began to relax slightly, sensing the immediate threat had diminished. Some whispered words of encouragement or disbelief, though they still maintained a careful distance. The director remained fully attentive, aware that one misstep could undo all progress. He spoke with steady calm, using words as tools to reinforce trust and reason. He reflected briefly on the irony of the situation. Decades spent teaching, negotiating, and enforcing the law, now applied to a scenario where patience, empathy, and calm speech were the only weapons available. He understood the fragility of human perception, the dangers of fear-driven reactions, and the importance of guiding those emotions toward rational thought. As the verification process continued, the officer's demeanor softened. The gun was lowered further, his breathing slowly returning to a more controlled rhythm. The director continued to maintain his calm, guiding the interaction with careful words and deliberate gestures. He projected authority without aggression, empathy without weakness, patience without passivity. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the officer stepped back completely, lowering the gun fully. The director remained seated, hands still visible, voice steady and calm. Verification was underway, other officers confirming his identity, and the immediate threat had been removed. Relief mingled with lingering tension. The situation was not yet fully resolved, but the immediate danger had passed. In that quiet moment, the director allowed himself a brief pause to reflect. The encounter had been surreal, frightening, and intense. He had faced a potentially deadly mistake with composure, using training, empathy, and clear communication to navigate a life-threatening situation. The lessons were profound. Fear can distort judgment, authority can be misapplied, and patience can be as vital as any law or weapon. He remained alert as officers completed the verification process. The original officer was visibly shaken, aware of the gravity of his actions and the narrow escape from a possible tragedy. The director, ever professional, focused on ensuring the situation continued to de-escalate safely. He emphasized cooperation, calm, and clarity, reinforcing that the incident could still be resolved without harm. As the morning continued, the crowd of onlookers slowly dispersed, some still whispering in disbelief, others recording the strange event in their minds and on their phones. The director remained composed, maintaining a calm presence while the other officers began taking control of the scene. The immediate threat had ended, but the emotional weight of the encounter lingered, a reminder of the unpredictability of human behavior and the importance of clear, calm leadership in moments of crisis. Finally, the situation was under control. The FBI director, having navigated a harrowing encounter with patience, empathy, and unwavering composure, prepared for the next steps. Cooperating fully with the investigation, addressing the incident professionally, and reflecting on the lessons learned. The morning, which had begun like any other, had turned into an unforgettable test of human emotion, authority, and reason. And though the tension that had hung over the quiet street began to slowly dissolve, but the situation was far from over. Other officers had arrived, moving with controlled urgency, assessing the scene, and beginning the process of verifying the FBI director's identity. Radios crackled as details were communicated, officers double-checking credentials and ensuring the safety of everyone involved. The original officer, who had held his weapon with such intensity just moments before, now stood aside, visibly shaken, trying to comprehend the gravity of what had just happened. The director remained in his car, maintaining calm and composure. His eyes scanned the surroundings, observing the reactions of the arriving officers and the small crowd that had gathered. There was a sense of relief in some faces, but also tension and uncertainty. The director knew that while the immediate danger had passed, the path to resolution would require patience and careful handling. He continued speaking softly to the original officer, reinforcing cooperation and calm. His tone was steady yet empathetic, recognizing the human error that had led to this dangerous moment. He reminded the officer that mistakes happen, but they could be corrected through proper procedures and calm communication. Slowly, the officer began to process the reality of the situation, his grip on the past moments of fear loosening. The arriving officers began questioning the original officer, asking for a clear account of what had led to the confrontation. There was tension in the air as the officer recounted his perspective, each word weighed against the undeniable truth of holding a high-ranking federal official at gunpoint. The director listened carefully, noting the mixture of fear, confusion, and regret in the officer's voice. It was a reminder that even trained professionals could make dangerous mistakes under pressure. Verification of the director's identity was confirmed through multiple channels. His credentials were checked, radios relayed confirmations, and the arriving officers confirmed what the director had been saying all along. The realization spread among the officers. The man they had been witnessing as a suspect was in fact the FBI director. Relief was visible, but so was a sense of accountability. The situation had been diffused, but lessons had been learned in a way no one could ignore. The director took a deep breath, allowing himself a brief moment of internal reflection. The encounter had been surreal and unnerving, yet his training and experience had guided him through the most dangerous moments. Patience, empathy, and careful communication had prevented a tragedy. He was aware, however, that the story would not end here. Investigations would follow, public reactions would unfold, and the incident would be scrutinized in ways that could affect careers, reputations, and public trust. He observed the original officer, who now looked completely different than just minutes before. Fear had given way to shock and embarrassment. The weight of responsibility was suddenly heavy on his shoulders. The director, ever composed, maintained a human approach. He acknowledged the officer's fear without judgment, emphasizing the importance of learning from the situation and moving forward responsibly. His words carried authority and empathy in equal measure. The crowd of bystanders had not yet dispersed entirely. Some whispered quietly, capturing the moment on their phones, trying to process what they had witnessed. The surreal scene of a high-ranking federal official being held at gunpoint by a fellow law enforcement officer was something they would remember for years. The director, while aware of the audience, focused solely on guiding the incident toward a safe and professional resolution. Other officers began taking control of the scene, directing traffic, and ensuring that bystanders remained at a safe distance. The original officer was gently separated from the immediate scene, allowing the director to step out of his car. The transition was slow and careful, each movement deliberate, avoiding any sudden gestures that could reignite fear or confusion. The director's calm presence continued to anchor the situation. As he stepped out, the director maintained a composed posture, hands visible, voice calm. He acknowledged the arriving officers with quiet authority, clearly explaining the situation and his identity. The original officer, standing a short distance away, appeared overwhelmed but attentive, trying to follow instructions while processing the reality of his actions. The director's professionalism helped guide the moment toward stability. Interviews and preliminary questioning began. The director cooperated fully, explaining the sequence of events from his perspective, detailing his approach to de-escalation and the strategies he used to remain calm. He emphasized safety, patience, and empathy as tools that had prevented the situation from escalating into violence. His words were clear, deliberate, and human-centric, offering insight into his thinking without casting blame unnecessarily. The original officer's reactions were mixed. Guilt, relief, and disbelief flickered across his face. He struggled to articulate the chain of thoughts that led him to draw his weapon, acknowledging the mistake but also trying to rationalize his fear and actions. The director listened carefully, ensuring that his responses were measured, focusing on the importance of accountability and learning rather than punishment in that exact moment. The atmosphere began to shift from tension to reflection. Meanwhile, the other officers were completing verification and documentation. Radios continued to hum, confirming identities and maintaining communication with dispatch. The director remained patient, understanding that bureaucracy and protocol were now critical in solidifying the resolution. He guided the process calmly, reinforcing cooperation and safety, ensuring that the scene remained orderly and controlled. As the situation began to stabilize, the director reflected on the human aspects of the encounter. Fear, misunderstanding, and error could lead to dangerous outcomes even among those trained to prevent them. Patience, clear communication, and empathy had been his tools for survival, and he hoped these lessons could extend beyond this single incident to inform better training, understanding, and response strategies in law enforcement. The original officer was gently escorted for further questioning and debriefing. The director continued to speak with the remaining officers, offering guidance on how to handle the aftermath professionally and safely. His approach was calm and structured, ensuring that all parties understood their roles and responsibilities. The director's demeanor remained composed, projecting authority tempered with human empathy, a model of professionalism under pressure. Witnesses began leaving the scene, conversations soft and speculative. The director observed their reactions quietly, aware of the impact the incident would have on their perception of law enforcement and public safety. The surreal nature of the event, coupled with the professional handling by the director, created a lasting impression of calm, reason, and accountability in the midst of chaos. With the immediate crisis resolved, the director began thinking ahead. The investigation would follow, public attention would grow, and lessons needed to be communicated to prevent similar incidents. He knew that this event could serve as an example of the importance of patience, verification, and empathy in high-pressure situations. It could influence protocols, training, and public discussion on law enforcement accountability and human error. The director took one final look at the scene before preparing to leave. The streets were slowly returning to their regular rhythm, traffic flowing, pedestrians moving on, and the morning returning to a semblance of normalcy. The officer involved had been taken aside for further processing, and the remaining officers were documenting the incident. Relief and reflection mingled in the air, a complex blend of human emotion and professional responsibility. In that quiet moment, the director considered the fragility of human judgment. Even those trained for high-stress situations could falter. The incident was a stark reminder that authority carried not just power, but responsibility, and that patience, empathy, and careful communication were essential tools for managing human behavior. The lessons of this day would resonate far beyond the immediate encounter. As he prepared to leave, the director addressed the remaining officers and witnesses calmly, emphasizing the importance of reflection, understanding, and accountability. His tone was firm yet human, reinforcing the need for professionalism, safety, and learning from mistakes. The immediate danger was over, but the responsibility of processing the incident responsibly remained. The director stepped away, confident that the situation had been handled with care and dignity. The lessons were clear. Fear can cloud judgment, communication can prevent disaster, and empathy can guide reason. The morning had tested him in ways no training could fully prepare for, yet his approach had ensured a peaceful outcome. The event would leave a lasting impact on all involved, shaping perspectives, procedures, and the understanding of human behavior in law enforcement. Though the morning had started like any other, it had become an extraordinary lesson in authority, fear, and professionalism. The FBI director's calm and composed handling of the encounter had prevented tragedy and provided a model for managing high-stakes situations. And while the full consequences of the incident were yet to unfold, the immediate danger had passed, leaving behind lessons that would resonate far beyond the quiet street where it all began. The morning air was filled with a mixture of relief and lingering tension as the FBI director stepped away from his car. The immediate danger had passed, but the incident was far from over. Other officers continued to secure the scene, documenting everything meticulously. Radios buzzed with updates, and officers exchanged quiet conversations about the surreal event they had just witnessed. The original officer, who had held the gun moments earlier, was being escorted for further questioning, visibly shaken and struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The director, known for his composure under pressure, now turned his attention to the aftermath. He understood that the situation required careful handling to ensure accountability, fairness, and public trust. While the adrenaline of the encounter was beginning to fade, he remained alert, aware that every step from this point forward would be scrutinized by colleagues, the media, and the public. He first spoke with the officers on scene, providing a clear and calm account of the events. He reiterated the sequence of actions, emphasizing how he had remained calm and cooperative and how the initial officer's actions had created a dangerous situation. His explanations were detailed but natural, human-centric, and focused on lessons rather than blame. The officers listened attentively, their expressions a mix of relief and reflection. As the investigation progressed, statements were taken from bystanders who had witnessed the incident. Their accounts were consistent with the director's story: a tense moment, a visible gun, and an eventual resolution without violence. Some expressed amazement at how composed the director had remained under such threatening circumstances. Their reactions highlighted the contrast between fear-driven impulsive actions and calm, deliberate reasoning in the face of danger. The original officer was now in a quieter room, being interviewed by senior officials. He explained his perspective, the fear and misjudgment that had led to drawing his weapon. He admitted to his mistake, acknowledging that he had failed to verify the director's identity before escalating the situation. His voice trembled slightly and his hands fidgeted as he recounted his actions. The weight of accountability was settling heavily upon him. Meanwhile, the director remained engaged with the investigation process, providing information, answering questions, and ensuring that every detail was documented accurately. He emphasized the importance of learning from the event, not only to prevent similar situations but also to improve protocols, training, and communication within law enforcement agencies. His focus was on systemic improvement, fairness, and ensuring safety for all. The media had started to pick up the story, though details were initially limited. The surreal nature of a high-ranking federal official being held at gunpoint by a local officer captured public attention quickly. Social media posts and news snippets began circulating, creating a mix of outrage, curiosity, and concern. The director, understanding the power of public perception, cooperated with communications teams to ensure accurate information was shared without sensationalism. His priority was transparency and professionalism, Within the department, discussions about accountability and training intensified. Supervisors reviewed the officers' actions, identifying how fear, miscommunication, and procedural gaps had contributed to the incident. The director participated in these discussions, not to criticize personally, but to highlight constructive solutions and ensure that lessons were internalized. He stressed that fear-driven mistakes could be mitigated through proper verification, communication, and de-escalation techniques. The original officer faced a growing realization of the consequences of his actions. While he had acted under stress and fear, the severity of his mistake could not be overlooked. Discussions of suspension, disciplinary actions, and potential legal implications were underway. The director, maintaining a human-centered approach, understood the necessity of accountability, while also acknowledging the human error that had contributed to the situation. He believed that learning and correction should follow alongside consequences. The director also spent time reflecting personally on the experience. Being held at gunpoint by someone trained in law enforcement was a profound test of patience, composure, and empathy. He thought about the delicate balance between authority and human error, the fragility of perception, and the importance of clear communication. His reflection emphasized how critical it is to handle fear and misunderstanding with reason rather than reaction. Throughout the morning, colleagues from the FBI and local law enforcement checked in, offering support and ensuring that the director was unharmed. Many expressed astonishment at his calm demeanor and professional handling of the incident. They recognized that his example had prevented a potentially tragic outcome and had set a standard for managing high-pressure situations with composure and humanity. The investigation moved toward preliminary conclusions. The original officer had admitted fault. Protocols for verification and identity confirmation were being examined, and recommendations for improved training were being drafted. The director's involvement ensured that the focus remained on constructive outcomes, emphasizing safety, professionalism, and public trust. The media coverage grew more detailed as verified accounts emerged. Reporters described the tense encounter, the officer holding the gun, and the director's calm navigation of the situation. Public response was a mixture of concern, outrage, and admiration. Many commented on the importance of proper training and the human element in law enforcement, while others focused on the unusual and alarming nature of the incident. The director's measured responses had helped shape a narrative of professionalism and rationality rather than panic and sensationalism. As the day progressed, the officer in question was formally charged with misconduct and temporarily suspended from duty, pending further investigation. The director continued to cooperate fully, ensuring that the process was transparent and focused on lessons learned rather than personal vindication. His approach highlighted the importance of integrity and accountability in both leadership and public service. The director also took time to speak privately with some of the officers involved, emphasizing de-escalation, empathy, and patience in their daily duties. He used his own experience as a teaching moment, demonstrating how calm, measured responses can prevent disaster, even in the most frightening situations. His guidance was practical, grounded in real-life experience and human-centric, reinforcing values of professionalism and responsibility. Bystanders who had witnessed the incident were invited to provide formal statements for the investigation. Their testimonies confirmed the events as they had unfolded, further supporting the director's account. The officers involved began to process the impact of the incident on their careers, public perception, and personal understanding of fear and authority. Through it all, the director maintained a composed and professional demeanor. He understood that fear, misjudgment, and human error could intersect in dangerous ways, and he focused on turning the incident into a learning experience. His attention to process, clarity, and empathy demonstrated the importance of human-centered leadership in law enforcement, where quick judgment must be balanced with understanding and caution. By evening, the immediate legal and administrative steps had begun. The officer responsible faced disciplinary hearings and the possibility of criminal charges, while recommendations for improved training and verification protocols were submitted. The director's role had been pivotal in guiding both the resolution of the incident and the development of lessons to prevent future occurrences. The day concluded with a reflection on human error, authority, and responsibility, The FBI director's experience underscored how easily fear and miscommunication can escalate into dangerous situations, and how patience, empathy, and professionalism can prevent harm. It was a profound reminder that even those trained to uphold the law are not immune to mistakes, and that leadership, calm, and clear communication are essential in navigating moments of extreme tension. As the streets slowly returned to normal, the director knew that the incident would have lasting effects. Colleagues, witnesses, and the public would remember the story, and it would become a case study in human behavior, law enforcement, and the importance of composure under pressure. The lessons were clear. Fear can mislead, authority must be verified, and calm, rational action can prevent tragedy. The director reflected privately on the emotional impact as well. Despite the relief and resolution, there was an understanding that this event would stay with everyone involved for a long time. It was a vivid example of the fragility of human perception and the power of reason, empathy, and patience to overcome fear and prevent harm. The director left the scene quietly, confident that justice, accountability, and learning would guide the aftermath, while the memory of the incident remained a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between fear and authority. The day after the incident began with a quiet sense of reflection. The streets had returned to normal, yet the FBI director could not shake the vivid memories of being held at gunpoint. The experience had been jarring, but it had also reinforced lessons about human nature, authority, and the importance of composure in moments of crisis. As he sat in his office reviewing the events and the reports from that morning, he considered the broader implications of what had happened. The officer involved was facing serious consequences. The suspension had been made official, and internal investigations were ongoing. Discussions of disciplinary actions and potential criminal charges were underway. The director knew that accountability was necessary, but he also understood the human element. Fear and error had collided to create a dangerous situation, and it was crucial that lessons were learned, systems improved, and trust restored. He spent much of the morning speaking with colleagues and advisors, helping them understand the incident from his perspective. His emphasis was on clarity, process, and the human side of law enforcement. He explained how fear could distort judgment, how authority could be misinterpreted, and how calm communication could prevent escalation. His colleagues listened attentively, absorbing the insights from someone who had experienced such a high-stakes situation firsthand. The media coverage had grown, though thanks to careful management, it remained focused on the facts rather than sensationalism. News outlets reported the unusual incident, a local officer holding the FBI director at gunpoint, and the swift, calm resolution that prevented violence. Public response was a mixture of shock, concern, and admiration for the director's handling of the situation. Many highlighted the importance of training, verification, and emotional intelligence in law enforcement. Throughout the day, the director reviewed protocols and procedures with department leaders. He advocated for improvements in training, particularly around identity verification, de-escalation, and fear management. He emphasized that law enforcement officers, no matter their rank or experience, were human and prone to mistakes under pressure. Creating systems that accounted for this human factor could prevent future incidents. The original officer remained under scrutiny, undergoing formal questioning and reflection. He had admitted to his error, acknowledging the consequences of acting impulsively without verifying the identity of the person before him. While accountability was inevitable, the process was also an opportunity for learning and correction. The director believed that understanding the human side of mistakes was as important as enforcing rules and consequences. Witnesses who had observed the encounter were interviewed formally. Their statements corroborated the director's account, providing further clarity on the sequence of events. Many noted the director's calm demeanor and clear communication, highlighting how it had prevented potential disaster. Their testimonies reinforced the lesson that in moments of high stress, composed leadership could save lives. The director also reflected on his own emotional journey through the incident. He had felt fear, disbelief, and frustration, yet he had maintained control. He realized that his ability to remain calm stemmed from decades of experience handling high-pressure situations and understanding human behavior. The encounter had tested his skills in a new way, forcing him to navigate authority, human error, and potential violence simultaneously. As the day wore on, The officer responsible for the incident began to understand the weight of his actions more fully. Discussions of the long-term impact on his career, the legal implications, and the trust he had breached occupied his thoughts. The director, aware of this, approached the situation with a human-centered mindset, recognizing that accountability could coexist with guidance and support to prevent future errors. Colleagues from both the FBI and local law enforcement continued to check in, offering support and discussing the lessons learned. The director emphasized empathy, patience, and professionalism as crucial tools for managing high-stress situations. He encouraged his team to consider not just the rules and protocols, but also the human tendencies that could influence behavior under pressure. By afternoon, formal reports had been drafted. The incident was documented thoroughly, from the initial confrontation to the resolution and the steps taken for accountability. Recommendations for improved training, communication, and verification procedures were included. The director's insights played a key role in shaping these recommendations, ensuring that the lessons of the day would be integrated into future practices. Public response remained engaged but calm, thanks in part to accurate reporting. Many expressed admiration for the director's ability to navigate the dangerous encounter with composure. Social media discussions highlighted the importance of empathy and understanding in law enforcement, showing that the human element could not be overlooked even in highly trained professionals. The director also spent time considering the long-term implications of the event. He knew that the story would become a case study in leadership, crisis management, and the importance of human-centered approaches to law enforcement. He reflected on how fear, authority, and communication intersected, creating moments that could escalate rapidly if not handled with care. The lessons were clear, both for him and for the wider law enforcement community. As evening approached, the director reviewed the day's developments. The officer responsible had been formally charged with misconduct and suspended, while protocols for verification and de-escalation were being strengthened. The director's role had been central in guiding the resolution, ensuring accountability, and highlighting the human side of the incident. His approach had prevented tragedy and set a standard for managing high-stakes encounters with professionalism and empathy. He took a moment to reflect privately, acknowledging the emotional weight of the incident. Being held at gunpoint was a profound experience, but it had also reinforced the value of patience, composure, and human-centered leadership. The director understood that fear and error were inevitable, but how individuals responded to them could make all the difference. His calm, measured approach had been the key to preventing disaster. The director also considered the impact on the public and law enforcement community. The incident was a reminder that mistakes could happen, even among trained professionals, and that accountability and learning were essential. His focus remained on ensuring that the lessons were shared, understood, and applied, creating a safer and more effective approach to law enforcement. As night fell, the city returned to its usual rhythm. The director, exhausted but composed, reflected on the extraordinary day. The encounter had tested his skills, patience, and understanding of human behavior in ways he had never imagined. It had also demonstrated the power of calm, empathetic, and professional leadership in preventing tragedy. The officer responsible would face consequences, but the overall outcome highlighted the importance of clear communication, verification, and reason in moments of high stress. The director's reflections extended beyond the immediate incident. He considered the broader implications for leadership, training, and public trust. He understood that fear, misjudgment, and human error were ever-present risks, but that measured, empathetic, and professional responses could prevent escalation. The incident would remain a vivid reminder of these truths, shaping his approach and guiding the practices of others in law enforcement for years to come. Finally, as the night settled, the director allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude. The morning's events had been dangerous, surreal, and challenging, yet they had also provided profound lessons. Lives had been preserved, mistakes were being addressed, and systems were being improved. The experience reinforced the importance of human-centered leadership, empathy, and calm reasoning in the face of fear and uncertainty. The FBI director knew that while the incident would be remembered, the lessons would endure, guiding behavior, improving protocols, and reinforcing the value of patience, understanding, and professionalism in every aspect of law enforcement.